All right. Okay, next order of business is the public grant policy. Just to give you a little background, I mean, it's something that's been, thought about by the administration. We and talked about. Our last council meeting, when we received a request from End Hunger, the sort of, took us all by surprise, and it was a significant amount. The town attorney informed me that it would probably be a good idea at this point in time for the town to, establish some guidelines. This is something that has been talked about in council work sessions as well. We, in discussions about this with the town administrator, it became real clear to me that, Holly and the staff, they jump through hoops when we go to the state for, just say our most recent 80 grand, dredges. I mean, we go through hoops, and that's what you do. And everybody goes through hoops, and you're lucky if you're the winner. So we certainly don't want to be, just writing checks carte blanche to someone that comes along and says, because, there's no such thing as a bad cause. I mean, there's just a lot of good stuff out there. So I'm trying to remember how this went. So I got input from fellow right here. That would be you, sir. But we've had conversations off and on about this as, mayor to council. The town attorney did some research into, the state of Maryland requirements. And, Holly and I hashed it about, and we sort of, this is what we came up with as I guess a pretty good start anyhow for the group to see. I'm assuming we all want to do, something, but to take a look at this, if I assume you've looked at it in advance, but just to take a look at the suggested guidelines and, see what you think. So I'm going to go over them. Okay. I think the recipient organization be located in Calvert County, preferably in the town limits. That the recipient organization provides a documented benefit to the citizens of Chesapeake Beach. We all talked about that in the agreement. Exempt nonprofit status with the IRS. That's a requirement for us. We've been exercising that. And so there's materials, documents that would be required to submit if we were to go through with these guidelines. In terms of governance, okay, we would ask the organization to provide a copy of their articles of incorporation and to provide their board roster with officers as specified. And I'm going to stop there at A, just to see if we're on board, or you want me to go forward, or.
I have a general question.
Go ahead, sir.
If you want to start over there.
I'm still the mayor.
Nobody
For another
questioned
year,
that.
Yeah,
right?
for another year. What's my one accomplishment?
So what's the plan for this? Is adopting it as a policy of the town? And I mean, generally, I'm not opposed to having criteria, but I guess I'm trying to understand the bigger picture.
Okay.
What we're trying to accomplish legislatively. I understand the moral aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
No problem with that. But legislatively, and because I'm just thinking, where's the flexibility in this? I read this.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see a lot of flexibility. I mean, if say a worthy cause in town comes here, they don't have boards, they don't have articles of incorporation. Are they disqualified from an opportunity? I think that's our decision to decide if they're worthwhile of a grant or not. So I'm just wondering, I guess, more generally speaking, what is our intent with
and I'll
this
answer that
in practice?
And I'll answer that.
Yeah.
this conversation in the work session is long overdue, in my opinion. As a group, I think, if we're going, we've stated opinions on this in work sessions in the past. We've pretty much, been steady with what the town's always, done in terms of, the beach bucks and the school and the railway museum. At some point in time, I've been wanting to have this conversation with the council before we enter a work session, which we do have. We're 6 months away from having a work session on next year's budget. So I just wanted to put it out there. And next thing we were just, getting information together and saying, well, here's what we got. But really, I want to know, what do you guys want to do? I mean, this was a heck of a lot of work was put into this in terms of just research. And I mean, do you want to have guidelines? Do you want to not have guidelines? I mean, it's up to the council. I'm just trying to start things here.
Right, no, and I appreciate the conversation.
Yeah,
and
that's really where I'm
it,
at.
It is. I mean, certainly it is overdue in some sense, but I guess how are we envisioning this to be implemented, and what is the flexibility within that? Because ultimately, this body decides how the taxpayers' money is spent, and I would prefer not to tie our hands per se to a document that, because we can't anticipate every issue or every request is going to become in front of this body. So while I'm certainly in favor of having, some established criteria that people can come to us, with the request, but as far as how are we going to implement this? That's my bigger question.
Well, actually, you just, I'm regurgitating. I'm really just putting it out there. So what do you guys want to do? So this is, you're asking your colleagues that question.
Yeah, that's my question.
Let's just go around the horn, see what we.
So I struggle with this. We've had some conversations about it. I don't think we can keep giving away money without some sort of guidelines. I mean, I think that's putting us at risk, because from what I understand of it, then, we need to have some reason to deny other people besides just saying we don't want to. We can't just give money to this group and not give it to that group. Somebody will come at us and be like, why? What is the reasoning here that you're giving away taxpayer money to this group and not to this group, and we're both nonprofits? So I think we need a criteria if we're going to do that. I'm not convinced how far we want to go down this road. Frankly, I mean, I think there are certain things, medical services, firefighting services, that are the duty of the town to provide to its citizens, but we may not have the money or the staff to do that. And so we partnership with places like the North Beach Volunteer Fire Department, with the Calvert County Hospital, to ensure that those services are provided to our citizens. But, and with that, I'll stop.
I recall that the attorney or the town attorney had advised that we adopt some guidelines. So I think it's completely appropriate that we're having this discussion. I agree with Derek. I think there needs to be a little more flexibility. And I agree. Keith made a good point that I don't know, we want to get into different levels of donations, but there are certain donations that the town has historically been a part of, donating to the school, the firehouse, the library, the hospital. There are critical services that our residents benefit from. And so it's undeniable that our donations to those fronts help improve services for our residents. Just having a general discussion about it. Again, I agree that we need to adopt some kind of criteria here. But I think there needs to be a little more flexibility in here, or otherwise the discretion of the council. It's nice to have guidelines to help curb things, but in the end of the day, the council does need to have, I think, the autonomy to decide for itself, for better or for worse.
Okay. Now I'll just add, because I didn't finish, is that I don't anticipate leaving this meeting with a set of guidelines. You say, okay, this is it. I'm just saying, hey, the September meeting is a good time to bring this up, because we're going to be in a work session in March or whatever, and let's bring it up now. We can bring it up again, but that's it.
I strongly support having some form of criteria for this because, as my colleague Keith pointed out, we face the possibility of answering that difficult question of, well, why did you give it to them, but you're not giving it to me? If we don't have some criteria. However, what struck me with this particular set is, boy, it seems very restrictive, onerous, burdensome, and I think what we would see is a number of organizations that have asked us for funding in the past would just say, you know what, forget it. This is just too much for me to do. And to anticipate that they would have to do this every year, I think there needs to be some kind of, maybe you get it on file or something like that, where you don't have to meet this requirement every year. But we need some guidelines. We need some basis to say, well, the reason why we didn't give you a grant was because of this item here. I completely accept that. I think this has gone way too far, and we need to find some kind of a middle ground.
Although I appreciate the desire to have some sort of guidelines for this, I agree with Keith's point that he made about critical services such as medical and fire. I think fundamentally, I've disagreed with using taxpayer money for nonprofit organizations consistently for years. So I don't know if we're being requested eventually to vote on this policy or not, but even by voting on eventually this policy, it's non-binding because it's not an ordinance or anything like that. It would legitimize it in my mind. So, I mean, I would not be supporting of this just for the mere fact that I think if we want to put in life-saving, like medical and fire, into our budget, we can now do so on a line item basis. And that by participating in supporting something like a grant request of public funds, I'm legitimizing the fact that I am okay personally with supporting providing grants to nonprofits. And I think I've made my position over the years quite clear that I'm not. I don't think it's my place to spend taxpayer dollars in that manner. I think if somebody wants to use if we have enough money to give for grants to nonprofit organizations, we ought to cut the tax rate. Every penny is $70,000. That's just my personal opinion. But I have been supportive of the medical and fire for the case that Keith made. But I think that, I don't know, getting to Derek's point, you know, when I had in my notes what I was going to say, non-binding, and I think that, I guess what Derek was getting at is, if this is an administrative policy, then you, as an administration, you can do whatever you want. You can have whatever policy you want, knowing that when it comes to funding something, the town council may want to increase something, and that would be fine, providing Greg with his amount of flexibility. But fundamentally, I fundamentally disagree. And so I think to provide comments on how to make this better would be legitimizing something that I simply don't believe in beyond, as Keith said, the medical and fire and like the library. I just fundamentally disagree with it. So in some ways, to have an opinion or how to strengthen this would be to legitimize something that I simply don't believe in. So that's my comment. I mean, I
Okay.
just don't fundamentally believe.
And I appreciate it. Yeah, if you want to say so. Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just, I'm an all things considered person, and I like to listen to what everybody has to say, and I'm always learning. I do feel we need to give some consideration to, or as otherwise, or as whatever the phrase that I used, the council's discretion. Item D under, or the item D here under elected official involvement, I'm not sure if I agree with that at all. Areas of volunteer at the firehouse, does that mean we don't consider a grant to the firehouse? I'm just not sure.
Actually, we don't give a grant to the firehouse. That's a line item. But your point is well
Given the
taken.
money to, you're right, being affiliated, I'm just not sure if
Yeah.
that's a good thing there. And the other thing I wanted to add was, some of the small organizations that the town has given money to over the years really add a lot to the fabric of this town. And one of the reasons.
With you. I got it. Okay. I have a thought if you there. I was thinking that, and I'll certainly take more, comment if you want. Like I said, we, put together. We started working. After getting some legal advice. I want to see something that the council is comfortable with. Obviously, I sat on the council for 20 years and familiar with the whole grant process. What went on. I'm wondering if maybe since we still have time, if the council would take the time to send comments to say me and Keith, if he would take the time to help me, and we could take your input. And you and I first started talking about this more than anybody. If you don't mind, I'd like to get input from everybody, and maybe we can come back up with a draft that addresses the flexibility that I'm kind of hearing that from members of the council. Just a thought. I mean, if the council wants to make another comment again, Derek, I'm certainly willing to. I'm just thinking we're at little phase one here. I'm thinking before we run through hoops, that maybe we can just get your thoughts and get together and take step two, if that's okay with the council.
Yeah, I mean, as far as a secondary comment, I mean, I certainly appreciate the effort that's gone into it, and I understand why, why there's a need and all that. And, ultimately, I guess, like I said, it's our decision, whatever the situation is, our decision. And there's nothing wrong with having something in the books as long as we agree on how it's being implemented.
Okay. Sound good, Keith?
Yeah, I have a question. So grant request versus line item. So where we give money to another organization. Could you
Well, currently,
clarify that a little
this
bit?
this was on the budget that I inherited, that we all did. If you look at the budget, there's a line item for fire protection service. We've got one for the police too, and that's where the fire department
Right.
comes from.
Right.
That's what I was.
Right. So I understand what the line item is. I'm just curious as to what differentiates it. So like what would make it different from
But we
a
have a
grant?
public grant line item.
Okay.
When somebody comes, like the hospital, that was part of the public grant line item. We received a significant request the other night. It was to basically put that amount of money in next year's public grant line item. Bulking, by the way,
those
but I
are
think that was
being
it.
conceptually, fundamentally, then those are two totally different things.
In
We're
my
only
mind.
talking about money that comes out of this public grant.
Yeah, right.
Thank you.
We good? You guys want to send me and Keith some feedback? We'll come up with a follow-up document at best and follow-up discussions. But I think it's good we talked about this in September. So, okie doke. Next item. Where's my agenda? And thank you, by the way, in advance for your input. B Street sewer line improvements, change order. You want to start, Holly? And
Summary, and I'll turn it over to Jay. So this is basically a follow-up to the B Street sewer line move that was originally estimated at $300,000. We put it out to bid and scaled some of the items back because there were some unknowns, and came in with a lower bid than expected. However, there is a fifth grinder pump that was required, and Jay can kind of walk you through the specifics on that. And in addition to that RFP that we had awarded to Schumer to make that move, and they did do a great job on site doing the work. We had some costs that was expected to Wires Inc. for the electrical connections at the locations, as well as expected costs for the camera locates as well. Jay, did you want to add any specifics?
Sure. So originally looking at it with our engineer, Paul Woodburn, I'm going to say the 30,000 foot level right after the slides, we estimated about 300,000 to move the sewer lines out front. I think you're all familiar. So anyway, after meeting a few contractors, I thought it would be in the town's interest to get some of the unknowns out of it. So I knew we were going to spend some money on some camera locates in-house. We did electrical in-house. It went out to bid. And at the work session, I remember we moved the amount of the contract over out of the rainy day fund. Instead of the 300,000, we moved the exact amount. And at that time, I was reminding the council that we were going to have some electrical that we were doing in the camera work. And the fifth house on there, it was in the RFP that until we dug it up, we weren't sure if gravity was going to work or a grinder pump. And there was 3,700s falling back to the house. So we had to install an additional grinder pump, which was on the original RFP. We just weren't sure it was necessary until we dug it up. I don't know if that clarifies how we got to where we're at, but if you have any questions, I can answer them. And so one thing I wanted to say after reading it, the $4,085 for the camera work, about half of that was before we did anything. We had to make sure the exposed sewer lines on the cliff weren't already failed that we'd had to address immediately. And the rest of it was going inside of each house and finding out where their, I'm going to say on their land, camera lines were to tie into them. And the electrical work was anticipated the whole time, and it added a little bit for the fifth one, but I was thinking we were going to spend 10 grand on 5 of them anyway, or 4 of them. So does that make sense?
Questions there? Oh, I'm sorry.
Are we done?
We are done.
So we had originally envisioned something on the order of $300,000. And if this change order is processed, we will now be at 200,200. So basically 2/3 of what we had set aside for the entire project. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Did you have a question, Bill?
But that's okay.
It's work
That's
session.
all right. I guess my only question is, and you might have said it and I missed it. So I understand the change request, but are you expecting to have more? Are you expecting to move closer to the 300,000, or are you expecting more change requests? Is basically my question.
No, this project. So these bills were incurred ongoing. Just when we got to the end of it, we only moved the 161.7 or whatever it was. So I knew these were coming. There's no more change orders. The project's complete, and we're
Okay,
we're
and
done.
that was my question. Is so basically the 200,000 will be the,
Yes.
which is, yeah. But I wanted to make sure there was no change requests beyond that, that were surprises that may be coming. Is that
There
okay?
were a lot of surprises, but we were able to work through them.
Right. Any questions?
I don't have any questions related to the order of magnitude. I just wanted to see the backup for the additional costs. I'm just doing a little bit of quick math. The $4,085 for the additional for the camera locates. I've got $1,480 with the 2 invoices.
That's correct. We're missing one invoice in there that Jay was looking at today, but
Yeah,
it is the total here.
It's the
and I can
original
get
one
you
from the
detail.
day of the. Actually, it was 2 days after the landslide. So I got to dig and find it.
Dale doesn't have a copy of that.
Not at the moment, but we can definitely get it to you.
Yeah, I just would like to see the backup from the contractor for substantiating the costs. And I don't see any backup for the change order from Schumer, like a proposal or something from them stating that it's 14,000.
Sure, we can get you that. Not a problem.
And just so we know, it was on the RFP originally. And it's on this little scan sheet. I was going through my notes. So from the very get-go, we knew that could be an option. And they did contact me. We met with Paul Ben Dyer on the site to approve the grades that they shot. So we gave them the approval to go ahead and install the 5th grinder pump while everything was open.
When we put
So-
it before council to approve, we'll make sure all the invoices are attached. That total the amount asking that we're requesting for.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise the original estimate that was put forth, we're well south of that, and I think that was a good guiding light with that, and I can understand with that sort of construction stuff, what you're getting into.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I don't have any problem with this fundamentally, but just procedurally, if memory serves, we authorized 300,000 for this. So do we need to take this action? Because didn't we already authorize all the above and beyond the funds for this?
That's a good question. I think my recollection is that we only moved over the amount
Amount to
that
cover
was
the initial, the
needed. So I'm
171.
not. We'll double check to see
Again,
what
I'm
action
not
is
opposed
required.
to it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just a
In
procedure.
theory, we knew what the number was, but the council wanted to just take the prudent, slower approach.
Piece at
to
a
doing
time.
this.
And we
Okay.
really just wanted to bring it to council's attention, considering the
Right.
dollar amount, since all
That's
that
right.
we have approved is 171,600.
Right. Since we certainly appreciate that. Thanks.
Okay, if we're good, we're good. They'll take us to
Mr. Mayor, point of order. I wanted to bring up one very important thing that unfortunately wasn't on the agenda. And that was the fact that yesterday was your birthday. Everybody, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Oh, she.
Happy birthday, dear Mayor. Happy birthday to you.
All right. So I have a confession I'm going to make. Okay, I told myself I was going to go on the Atkins diet. I guess I'll have to wait a week.
That starts on Monday.
This is great. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, you're a real devil over there. We gotta watch this guy. You know. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Not now. Just gonna put it over here. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Howard. Thank you, everybody. You got me again. Probably should have canceled this meeting. Yeah, we got her good. Okay. Need a motion to close the meeting under statutory authority of Maryland Anointed Code General Provisions, Article 3-305B1, to discuss the appointment to fill the vacant town council seat.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, let's do it. And I believe go home, Jay. You can go home, and Sharon, you got to stick around, don't you? All right. Thank you for interrupting your night like that. Thank you. We don't. No, we can turn everything. Oh yeah. You want to go to the bathroom? I already went.